Hey guys, we're going to do a little more discussion on memorizing the structure of the drop 2 chords. As I've mentioned, I didn't have and don't really have the phone numbers memorized of the drop 2, but there are many structural patterns that are helpful in memorizing the shapes of them and even to memorize those numbers. As I've said, one of the things that worked for me is I know what the chord looks like. A 5 on top is this basic shape. The root being on the second string, I can just see where the other fingers are going to go. That's from experience, of course. If I put the root on this string, I have to reach a little further. There's an A major 7. All of my drop 2s work like that. When I think of a 7 on top, I can see that the root is on the third string, the 7 on the top. When I think of a 3 on top, I know that the root's on the bottom and the 3's on top, and this is my shape. From there I can make all my alterations. Root on top looks like this. Root 5, 3, and 7 from the top down, and then I have to put a 9 on it. Those came to me just through strict repetition of the chords themselves. When I look at them now and when I've discussed them with you in these lessons, some other things have rolled through my mind that have really helped me. So let's have a quick look at how they're built, what drop 2 means again, and then a couple of the patterns. First off, when you build a chord in a closed voice, you would have root 3, 5, and 7. That means you're building your chord in thirds. The 3 is a 3 above the root, obviously. The 5's a 3 above the 3. The 7's a 3 above the 5. Depending on whether those are major or minor thirds will determine what the quality of your chord is. In the drop 2, you take the second note from the top and drop it to the bottom. So when you have the 7 on top, you have the 5 on the bottom. So it's 5, root 3, and 7. When we do our first inversion, we've moved the root to the top in a normal closed voice, 3, 5, 7, and 1. Then you drop the 7 to the bottom. 7, 3, 5, and 1 becomes the drop 2. Second inversion, not only your root up there, but now your 3 goes up as well. So from the bottom in closed, you have 5, 7, 1, and 3. Then you drop the 1 to the bottom, it's 1, 5, 7, and 3. And so on. That's how you build your drop 2. And these are what my teacher would have referred to as the phone numbers. 5, root 3, and 7. 7, 3, 5, and 1. 1, 5, 7, 3. And the last one, 3, 7, 1, and 5. A few tricks that are super helpful for me to memorize these. One day I realized that you can divide the chord in half. You've got 2 low notes, 2 high notes. The 2 low notes are always going to be root and 5, 5 and root, or 3 and 7, 7 and 3. Of course, it sounds like I just told you all the notes, but you have 1 or 2 of those combinations. On the top or on the bottom, you're going to have root and 5 in one order. On the top and on the bottom, you would have 3 and 7 together in a certain order. You can memorize those orders, and then you've got your phone numbers memorized by that. For instance, that means if there's a 5 on top, root has to be right below it. So the top 2 notes are root and 5. The bottom 2 notes have to be 3 and 7 or 7 and 3. We can figure that out because whatever came before the 5 is the drop 2, the 3. So on the bottom it's 3, 7, root 5. That's this guy here. If I have the 7 on top, I have to have the 3 with it. So it would be 7 and 3. The 5 and 1 are on the bottom, and which ones go on the bottom? Well, whatever came before 7, the 5 has dropped to the bottom. So it's 5, root 3, and 7. That's right here. There's another way to see that too. Once you know what the outside notes are, the inside 2 notes are actually thirds apart. They're in their normal closed voice order. So if I have root on top, I have to have a 5 next. I have to have the note before the 5 right there, so it's 3 and 5, and the 7 is on the bottom. So from the bottom, it's 7, 3, 5, root. Let's pick another one. If I have 3 on top, 3's and 7's are always together. Whatever comes right before the 7 is next to it in the middle of the chord, so that's 5 and 7, so root's on the bottom. 3 on top has root 5, 7, and 3. The next thing you might recognize in that is that roots and 5's create a perfect 5th. If I invert them, 5 and root, I have a perfect 4th. 3 to 7 is a perfect 5th. Inverted, 7 to 3 is a perfect 4th. So when I talk about those outside chunks of the chord, 2 notes on one side, 2 notes on the other, they're either going to be perfect 5ths or perfect 4ths. And then we combine those together and we find out what kind of chords we have. One of my favorites is the 3 on top. With the 3 on top, the 7 is under it. That's a stacked 4. The root is on the bottom, and it's a power chord with the 5th. So the 3 on top is very visual to me. It's a power chord, and then stacks. 1, 5, then 7 to 3 is a 4th. So perfect fifth and perfect fourth. As you go through your qualities, you change that. You'll flat your 7, flat your 3, flat your 5, double flat your 7, etc. But the template, the major 7, is a power chord, 1, 5, and the inversion, the 4 on top, 7 and 3. That's a 3 on top. 3s and 7s, remember, are related. If I do a 7 on top, I have something similar. Not a perfect fifth and then a perfect fourth, but rather a perfect fourth, then a perfect fifth. So 7 on top has a 3 right under it. Power chord, a perfect fifth on the bottom. We have the 5 and the root on the bottom, so a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth makes the 7 on top. If I can see it, if I can get some idea that this is the chord I have, then I know what my phone number is, because a stacked 4 is not root 5, it's 5 root. The perfect fifth shape is not 7-3, it's 3-7. So if I can sort of see this, I can see that it's 5 root 3-7. Those two are nice. 7 on top, 3 on top. I've either got the power chord and the stacked 4, or the stacked 4 and the power chord. When I go to root on top and 5 on top, I'm going to lose that. I won't have a mix of a perfect fifth and a perfect fourth in my intervals. I'll have either perfect fourths or perfect fifths. So root on top has a 5 right under it. There's your stacked 4. The dropped note is a 7, so 7 and 3 is the perfect 4 on the bottom, 5 and root perfect 4 on the top. So you have two sets of 4s there. Again, our qualities change, so there's major 7, which as you know will make a major 9 later, dominant 7 with a flat 7, minor 7 with a flat 3, minor 7 flat 5 with a flat 5, and diminished. So root on top is stacked 4s. That means it must be 7-3 5 root. 5 on top is the hard to reach one. So we've got a perfect fifth here, root to 5. The note that is dropped is the 3 down to the bottom. The note that's closest to the root is the 7 in the middle. So 3 to 7 is a power chord on the bottom, root to 5 a power chord on top. So if you have the 5 on top, you have two perfect fifths, the 3 to 7 and the root 5. Then of course we can flat the 7 to dominant 7, flat the 3 to minor, flat the 5, double flat the 7. So we'll go through all our contortions, and that's on every set of strings. But those are the ideas I see there. Because I've got shapes memorized, I see the 3 on top like this, I see the 5 on top like this, the root on top like that, the 7 on top like that. I see those already. So I already recognize my 4 and my 5th here, or my 5th and my 4 here, or my 4 and my 4 here, or my 5th and my 5th here. And again, that's on every set of strings. So that gives me this look, and here's what they look like then. 3 on top gives me the power chord on the bottom, root 5, 7, 3. So if I see that shape at all, root 5 has to be this perfect fifth shape, 7 and 3 has to be the fourth. So it's root 5, 7, 3. If I see this shape, a stack and then a note sticking out, I know the stack is 5 root, because that's the perfect fourth. The 7 sticking out gives me a perfect fifth, 3 to 7. If I see them all stacked or trying to stack, then I know I've got 7, 3 on the bottom, that's a perfect fourth, 5 root on top, so 7, 3, 5 root. If I see that whole spread out one, that's a pair of perfect fifths. That means it must be 3, 7 on the bottom, because that's a perfect fifth, root 5 on top, because that's a perfect fifth. Hopefully you can use any one of these ideas to help you memorize. What I did not find helped me very much is just strictly doing them by rote, writing down over and over again that I have 5 root 3 7, 5 root 3 7, 5 root 3 7, trying to see them. I have to do some really quick math rather than just blurt them out as 4 numbers. We'll see how you guys do with that. Remember to make sure you're playing them though, as well as memorizing some of the structural ideas behind them. Talk to you later. Have fun.